her father-in-law Ate on the floor, while her own father dined like a king. But when karma returned, even love turned its back. What unfolded next left the whole village speechless. In the lively village of Nadomo, everyone admired Nafisa, not just for her looks, but because she was humble and kind. She never boasted or showed off. Instead, she had a gentle smile and eyes full of warmth. When the news came that Nafisa was to marry Balo, the son of the wealthy and respected merchant, Papa Jakanzi, from the city of Uloa, the entire village celebrated. People believed Nafisa's life was about to change forever, that her dreams were finally coming true. The wedding was a magnificent event that seemed to light up the whole village. The sound of drumming filled the air, steady and powerful, while dancers moved gracefully, their feet kicking up dust as they swirled around with energy and joy. Lanterns hung above, glowing like stars and casting a soft light over everyone gathered. It was a day of happiness and hope, and the whole village felt the excitement. Madu, Nafisa's father, was a poor man who worked hard every day, but today his heart was full. He watched his daughter, dressed in beautiful clothes, smiling as she prepared to leave their simple home behind. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "My daughter is going to live like a queen," he whispered softly to himself, proud beyond words. Everyone thought Nafisa was lucky. Marrying into a rich family meant she would never have to worry about money again. The Jakanzi house was known to be grand, full of wealth and comfort. People imagined her living in a big home, eating fine food and wearing elegant clothes. But as Nafisa left Nadomo and entered the gates of Uloa, the place where Balo's family lived, the feeling inside her began to change. The grand house, which looked like a palace from far away, did not feel warm or welcoming. The large doors and polished floors seemed cold and empty. The silence in the halls was heavy, and something in the air made her heart ache. The bright future she had imagined started to feel more like a trap. At the wedding, everyone saw only the beauty, the joy, and the promise of a new life. But inside, Nafisa was about to face challenges she never expected. The house was not just a home. It was the beginning of a difficult journey, one where she would have to fight to find her place and protect her family's honor. What began as a joyful celebration quickly turned into a story of struggle. Nafisa's new life was full of unseen battles and hidden pains. The grand wedding was the start of a path that tested her courage and patience. Her dreams of happiness now seemed distant, as the palace that welcomed her became a prison that held her tightly, with walls built from silence and coldness. This was only the beginning of Nafisa's story, a story where appearances deceived, and true strength was needed to survive what lay ahead. Nafisa stepped into Uloa city with her heart full of hope, and her wrists shining with golden bangles, a symbol of her new life and status. The Jakanzi estate towered before her, more magnificent than anything she had ever seen. The floors gleamed like mirrors, the tall pillars stood proud and strong, and the large glass windows caught the sunlight, scattering light like tiny rainbows around the rooms. Outside, a lush garden breathed with the soft sounds of fountains, the water trickling gently, creating a peaceful melody. Everything was perfect, too perfect it seemed. But something was different here, something Nafisa hadn't expected. There was no mother-in-law to greet her, no strong woman to rule the house or set the tone. Papa Jakanzi, the head of the family, was alone. Years before, his wife had passed away, leaving him to carry the weight of the household by himself. He was a quiet, gentle man, with a soft voice and a slight hunch that made him look smaller than his wealth suggested. When Nafisa arrived, he greeted her with kind hands and warm words that seemed to carry years of loneliness. "I may be old, but I have waited for a daughter to bring light back into this house," he told her with a smile that reached his tired eyes. At first, Nafisa was careful and respectful. Each morning, she greeted Papa Jakanzi with a polite smile, served him tea with the best care, and sat beside him for short conversations about the weather or the city. She wanted to be the perfect daughter-in-law, the one who would win the heart of this elderly man and bring harmony to the household. But as days passed, something inside her began to change. The way Papa Jakanzi walked slowly across the polished floors made her impatient. His cough, soft but frequent, grated on her nerves. Even his gentle smiles, meant to show kindness, started to feel like reminders of how fragile and dependent he was. Nafisa's respect began to fade, replaced by irritation she didn't fully understand at first. She started to avoid sitting with him for long. Her greetings became shorter, colder, The warm tea she once served was now left to cool before she handed it over. Little by little, the kindness in her eyes dimmed, and a new feeling grew, one of annoyance and frustration. No one else lived in the house to soften the atmosphere. With no mother-in-law to set rules or guide her behavior, Nafisa's true feelings surfaced. The mask she wore to hide her anger slipped, revealing the impatience and disrespect lurking beneath. She began to treat Papa Jakanzi not as the father of her husband or the respected elder he was, but as a burden, a weak old man whose presence was inconvenient. Instead of warmth, she gave him coldness. Instead of care, she showed neglect. The golden bangles on her wrists, once a symbol of honor and joy, now seemed like chains tying her to a responsibility she resented. What started as a hopeful new chapter turned into a quiet battle. The large estate, with all its beauty and luxury, echoed with silence and tension. Nafisa's heart, once filled with dreams, grew heavy as she realized that life in Uloa was not as perfect as she had imagined. The gentle man who had welcomed her so kindly was now the target of her growing impatience. And so, the grand house began to feel colder with each passing day, not because of the absence of a mother-in-law, but because of the daughter-in-law who forgot the value of respect and love. The story of Nafisa's true colors was only just beginning. A month after Nafisa moved into the Grand Jakanzi estate, her father, Madu, came to visit her. The moment Nafisa knew he was coming, she changed everything about the house. The living room, usually quiet and untouched, was now spotless. Every surface gleamed, and the air smelled of fresh flowers. She took out the finest plates and polished them until they shone. She even instructed the cook to prepare Madu's favorite meal, goat meat stew served with crispy fried plantain, a dish that reminded him of home and his humble life. When Madu arrived, Nafisa greeted him with a smile so bright it could light up the whole room. She acted as if he were a king entering his palace. "Papa, please sit here at the head of the table," she said, pulling out the best chair with pride, making sure he was comfortable. Her manner was perfect, as if she wanted to show the world she loved and honored her father. Papa Jakanzi, the wealthy and respected father-in-law, quietly walked into the room, smiling warmly as he prepared to join them. But Nafisa's smile quickly changed. She stopped him before he could sit down at the table. "Baba, your plate is on the side today," she said with a forced politeness. "There's no space for you at the main table." Without protest, Papa Jakanzi took his plate and quietly moved to sit near the kitchen, a place far from the center of attention and warmth. His smile faded as he lowered himself to a small chair, away from the beautifully set table where Madu and Nafisa sat. Madu looked around, puzzled and hurt. He couldn't understand why the father of his son-in-law was being pushed aside like a stranger. "Why isn't he eating with us?" Madu asked, glancing between Nafisa and Papa Jakanzi. Nafisa laughed lightly, trying to hide the truth behind her words. "Oh, Baba prefers his quiet corner," she said, brushing it off as if it was normal and nothing to worry about. But deep down, everyone knew it wasn't true. This moment showed the harsh reality of Nafisa's world. Two fathers, two very different worlds. Her own father, Madu, was treated like a respected guest, sitting at the best seat, enjoying the finest food prepared just for him. But Papa Jakanzi, the man who should have been honored as the head of the house, was pushed aside, forced to eat alone on the floor, away from the family's celebration. This wasn't just about food or seating arrangements. It was about respect, pride, and where love was truly given. Nafisa's coldness towards Papa Jakanzi was not hidden anymore. It was clear she valued her father's presence more than that of her father-in-law, even if Papa Jakanzi had given her so much. Madu felt both pride and sadness. Pride that his daughter was still his loving child, but sadness for the man who had welcomed her into this grand home and now sat alone like an outsider. The gap between the two worlds, her humble origins and the rich life she married into, was bigger than anyone expected. This moment was only the beginning of many struggles. It revealed Nafisa's true feelings and how differently she treated the two most important men in her life. The warmth she showed her father contrasted sharply with the cold distance she created around Papa Jakanzi. It was a clash of worlds, a test of values, and a story that would unfold with consequences no one saw coming. After Madu left, Nafisa's attitude toward Papa Jakanzi changed completely. The small respect she had shown at first disappeared like smoke in the wind. She stopped greeting him in the mornings, as if he had become invisible to her. No more warm smiles or kind words, just cold silence. His meals, once carefully served, were now left untouched, placed on a simple stool near the back door, far away from the family dining area. The food often grew cold before he could eat it. When guests arrived, Nafisa proudly introduced herself as the lady of the house. She spoke confidently, with charm and grace, but never once mentioned Papa Jakanzi. It was as if he didn't exist, like a shadow fading into the background. To outsiders, the estate seemed bright and full of life, but inside, the man who had built the family's fortune was pushed aside and forgotten. One afternoon, Papa Jakanzi quietly stepped into the main kitchen to pour himself a glass of water. The kitchen was the heart of the home, a place filled with the aroma of cooking and the chatter of helpers. Nafisa came in just then, and when she saw him there, she rolled her eyes with clear annoyance. Without even trying to hide her irritation, she muttered under her breath, "This is for guests. Use the back tap, please." Her words cut through the air, loud enough for the maids to hear. From that moment, the house staff started following Nafisa's example. The maids stopped bowing when greeting Papa Jakanzi, their heads no longer lowered in respect. They walked past him, as if he was an invisible object in the room. Even the driver, who used to treat Papa Jakanzi with honor, began taking orders directly from Nafisa, even when the old man stood right beside him. The change was painful to watch. Papa Jakanzi's presence in his own home was shrinking day by day. The man who had raised a powerful family, who had built this estate with hard work and wisdom, was now treated like a stranger. No one spoke to him with kindness. No one invited him to sit at the table with the rest of the family. His opinion was ignored, his stories unheard. Nafisa's coldness grew bolder, her disrespect louder. She acted as if the house belonged only to her and her husband, and Papa Jakanzi was merely a forgotten relic of the past. The warmth that once filled the estate was replaced by silence and cold shoulders. The very foundation of respect that held families together was cracking under Nafisa's indifference. This growing disrespect was not just a matter of manners, it was a silent war, a battle for power, for recognition, for control of the household. Nafisa wanted to show that she was the one in charge, that Papa Jakanzi's time was over, but in doing so, she ignored the truth that without him, none of this would exist. Papa Jakanzi became like a ghost in his own home. His footsteps were soft and careful, his voice rarely raised. He no longer joined family conversations or celebrations. The once proud father-in-law sat alone, swallowed by silence, waiting for a day when he would be seen and respected again, or perhaps quietly fading away, forgotten in the very place he called home. One calm morning in the Jakanzi estate, Nafisa asked Papa Jakanzi to help bring down a box of dishes from the storage room. He didn't hesitate, though his body was old and slow. His heart still wanted to be helpful. Carefully, he lifted the box, but his hands trembled more than usual. Suddenly, one of the plates slipped from his grasp and crashed onto the floor, breaking loudly into two pieces. Nafisa rushed in, her face flashing with anger. "What did you do?" she snapped sharply, eyes blazing. "These plates are imported from Kenya. Do you even know how expensive they are?" Her voice echoed through the room, sharp and unforgiving. Papa Jakanzi looked down at the broken plate in his hands, a heavy sadness settling over him. I'm sorry," he murmured softly, barely loud enough to be heard. His voice carried a tired humility that came from years of living with grace. "You always break things," Nafisa said coldly, stepping back as if the broken plate was a sign of his uselessness. "Just stay in your room next time. Don't bother anyone." He stood there, clutching the shattered ceramic, like a broken memory of better days. The room felt colder than ever, the silence louder than Nafisa's angry words. No one came to comfort him. No one tried to ease the sting of humiliation he felt deep inside. That night, as the sun set behind the tall pillars of the mansion, the division in the house was clear. Nafisa and her husband Barlow sat comfortably at the dining table, enjoying grilled fish and soft, warm pounded yam. Their laughter filled the room, carefree and loud, as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Papa Jakanzi ate alone. Nafisa had given him watery soup and stale bread, the simplest meal in the kitchen. There was no plate or chair for him. He sat on the cold, hard floor near the kitchen door. His hands trembled again, this time from hunger and sorrow. The contrast was painful. The man who had raised a great family, who had built the wealth they now enjoyed, was left to eat scraps in silence. His presence, once honored, had been reduced to a shadow sitting on the floor. Papa Jakanzi's heart ached, not just from hunger, but from the way his daughter-in-law had made him feel unwanted. He remembered the joy in his family home before Nafisa came, when respect and love filled every corner. That broken plate was more than just a cracked dish. It was a symbol of the cracks growing between Nafisa and the man who was supposed to be her family. Her harsh words and cold treatment chipped away at his dignity, piece by piece. But Papa Jakanzi remained quiet, swallowing his pain in silence. He knew that fighting back wouldn't help. The house, once a place of warmth, had become a cold battlefield. And in this fight, Nafisa was winning, not with kindness, but with cruelty. This small mistake, a broken plate, sparked a louder truth. Nafisa's disrespect was deep and growing. Her harsh voice and cold actions echoed through the halls, while Papa Jakanzi was left alone, his role as father and elder fading away, piece by piece, like that cracked plate on the floor. When Madu came back to visit his daughter Nafisa, he carried gifts from their village, fresh fruits, sweet local honey, and roasted groundnuts wrapped carefully. Nafisa was eager to impress him this time. She hurried around the house, cleaning every corner, polishing floors, and preparing his room with fine clothes laid neatly on the bed. She wanted everything perfect, like a queen welcoming her king. The moment Madu arrived, Nafisa transformed. She greeted him with warmth, guided him straight to the dining room, and pulled out the most comfortable padded chair for him. His plate was always full of hot, spicy food, the flavors he loved. His glass was never empty. The servants moved quickly to attend his every need, all under Nafisa's strict instructions. Madu sat proudly, feeling honored and respected. He smiled as he ate, thinking this visit was how family should be, full of love and care. For a moment, he forgot the emptiness he had sensed during his first visit. He thought maybe Nafisa had changed, that she truly loved and respected her father-in-law. But just a few steps away, in the quiet kitchen corner, Papa Jakanzi sat alone. His chair was simple, unpadded, far from the warmth of the dining room. His tea was cold and untouched. The servants ignored him, and Nafisa barely glanced his way. The contrast was painful to see. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the house grew quiet, Madu decided to find Papa Jakanzi. Walking slowly toward the kitchen, he found the old man sitting on a low stool, staring at the empty walls. "Papa, what are you doing here all alone?" Madu asked softly, concern clear in his voice. Papa Jakanzi turned to him, a sad smile touching his lips. "There are kings and there are ghosts in this house," he said quietly. "I am the ghost." Madu's heart sank at those words. He looked at the frail figure before him, the man who had built the fortune and family now forgotten in his own home. It was as if Papa Jakanzi was invisible, living in the shadows while Nafisa played the queen of the house. Madu felt anger rise inside him, not just at Nafisa, but at the cruelty that had crept silently into the grand estate. How could his daughter treat her own father-in-law like a stranger? How could the man who welcomed her with open arms be pushed aside and ignored? That night, Madu sat with Papa Jakanzi in the dim kitchen light, sharing the gifts from the village. He tried to comfort the old man, promising to talk to Nafisa to make things right. But deep down, Madu knew this was not just about respect. It was about the broken heart of a family divided. The image of two men, one treated like a king, the other like a ghost, would stay with Madu forever, and with it, the painful truth that wealth and power could not protect love or honor inside a home torn apart by coldness and disrespect. The next morning, Madu asked Nafisa to join him for a walk in the garden. The air was fresh, and the flowers were just beginning to bloom, but the tension between them was thick. Madu's steps were slow but firm as he led her toward a quiet bench under the shade of a large mango tree. He stopped and looked her in the eyes, his voice steady but full of pain. "Nafisa, tell me, who is this man to you?" Nafisa answered quickly, almost coldly. "My husband's father." "And I?" Madu asked, softer this time. She hesitated, then said, "My own father." Madu let out a heavy sigh and looked away for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he faced her again with a sad expression. "Then why," he asked, "does your husband's father eat like a beggar while I eat like a chief?" Nafisa's eyes dropped to the ground. She couldn't meet his gaze. The question hung between them, sharp and accusing. Madu's voice grew stronger, but still carried the weight of disappointment. "I raised you better than this, Nafisa. You were taught respect, kindness, and honor. Yet here you are, wearing gold on your arms, but carrying shame deep inside your soul." Her lips trembled, her heart heavy, but no words came out. The silence said more than any argument could. Madu's eyes searched hers, hoping to find the daughter he knew beneath the coldness she showed her father-in-law. A house is not just walls and wealth, he continued quietly. It is built on love, respect, and caring for those who came before us. How can you forget that so easily? Nafisa's shoulders shook slightly, her pride battling with the guilt settling in her chest. She wanted to speak, to explain herself, but the truth was hard to deny. Madu put a hand on her shoulder, not to scold, but to remind her of the family she came from. Remember who you are, Nafisa. Don't let riches blind you to the people who love you. For the first time in weeks, Nafisa's eyes filled with tears. The mask she had worn to hide her true feelings cracked. She realized how far she had fallen, how cold she had become. That moment in the garden wasn't just a conversation. It was a mirror showing Nafisa the truth she needed to face, the pain she had caused, the respect she had lost, and the family she risked destroying. Madu's words echoed in her mind as they walked back inside, leaving her to wonder if she could find the strength to change before it was too late. That evening, Madu insisted that the whole family should eat together. Nafisa hesitated, her face tight with reluctance, but she finally agreed. The dining room was prepared carefully, and 3 chairs were pulled up to the polished wooden table, one for Madu, one for Barlow, and one for Nafisa herself. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew this was going to be different, but there was one place left empty at the table. Papa Jakanzi's plate was not on a chair. Instead, it was placed on the cold floor near the corner of the room. The staff stood quietly, watching, unsure of what would happen next. The air felt heavy with unspoken words. Madu looked around the table, his eyes locking onto the spot where Papa Jakanzi's plate lay. His heart ached seeing the father-in-law, the man who had welcomed Nafisa with open arms, reduced to eating on the floor like an outcast. Without saying a single word, Madu calmly picked up his own plate and moved to sit on the floor beside Papa Jakanzi. His voice was steady and clear as he said, "If he eats here, so will I." A silence fell over the room. No one dared to speak or move. The message was loud and clear. Disrespect toward Papa Jakanzi would not be tolerated. Nafisa's face tightened with anger and embarrassment, but she was powerless against the quiet strength of Madu's action. Barlow shifted uncomfortably, unsure where to sit or how to react. The house staff exchanged glances, caught between their loyalty to Nafisa and the undeniable dignity of the old man and his guest. That night, the story began to spread beyond the walls of the estate. By morning, every staff member in the house had told the tale, each adding their own shock and disbelief. Neighbors, friends, even the market women, who once praised Nafisa, now whispered about the disgrace she had brought upon her husband's family. News traveled quickly in Ulawa city, and soon the entire community knew that Madu, the proud father from the village of Nadomo, had chosen to sit and eat on the floor rather than watch Papa Jakanzi suffer humiliation alone. The villagers admired Madu's courage, and many questioned Nafisa's cold heart. The household, once filled with celebration and hope, was now shadowed by shame and judgment. Nafisa's actions had shattered the respect and unity that should have been at the heart of the family. The story of the dining room became a symbol, not just of one man's pride, but of a powerful lesson in honor and respect that Nafisa could no longer ignore. The evening had marked a turning point. The cold plate on the floor was no longer just a sign of disrespect. It was a challenge, a public exposure of Nafisa's cruelty and the strength of a father's love. It was a moment that would change everything, forcing everyone to face the truth of what it means to be family. And while no one spoke that night, the silent meal on the floor echoed louder than words ever could. That very day, after the tense dinner, Madu quietly packed his bag. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene, just the steady, calm movements of a man who had reached his limit. His heart was heavy, but his resolve was clear. He could no longer stay in a house where respect and love had been replaced by coldness and cruelty. At the gate of the Grand Jakanzi estate, Madu stopped and turned to face Nafisa. His eyes were filled with disappointment, but his voice was steady and strong. "I came here proud," he said softly, "but I leave in shame. A child who forgets her roots becomes dust in the wind." Nafisa looked away, unable to meet his gaze. She felt a sharp sting in her chest, but pride held her back from any words of apology. She had been too blinded by her new life to see the damage she was causing. Then Madu turned to Papa Jakanzi, the gentle old man who had been treated like a ghost in his own home. With deep respect, Madu bowed his head and said, "Forgive us. It was a moment filled with humility and sorrow, a silent apology for the pain and disrespect that had filled the house. Papa Jakanzi's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He reached out, and they embraced, a quiet gesture of forgiveness and shared sadness. It was clear that Papa Jakanzi's kindness remained, even in the face of rejection. Without another word, Madu lifted his bag and walked away, leaving behind the grand walls and the cold silence of the estate. The heavy gates closed slowly behind him, as if sealing off a chapter of broken pride and lost respect. That evening, dark clouds gathered, and rain began to fall heavily over Ulawa city. The rhythmic sound of raindrops beating against the windows filled the quiet house. Papa Jakanzi sat alone by the window, watching the rain fall in steady streams. His mind was filled with memories of better days, of hope, and of a family that once seemed whole. Nafisa stood silently nearby, feeling for the first time the deep weight of her choices. The empty house felt colder than ever, and the silence pressed heavily on her heart. She could no longer escape the truth she had ignored, the loneliness she had created, the respect she had thrown away. Outside, the rain washed over the city, as if trying to cleanse the wounds within the walls of the Jakanzi estate. Inside, a powerful silence stretched between the remaining two, one who had been forgotten and one who had lost everything. In that moment, Nafisa finally felt the full weight of the silence, the loss of her father's pride, the pain of a broken family, and the cost of forgetting where she came from. It was a silence louder than any argument, a truth that could not be hidden by gold or status. The departure of Madu marked the beginning of a long and lonely journey for Nafisa, a journey that would force her to face her mistakes and understand what it truly means to honor family and love. A month passed after Madu's departure, and the house in Ulowa grew even quieter. Papa Jakanzi, now older and weaker, began to fall ill. His hands trembled more, his steps grew slower, and his once gentle voice faded into soft whispers. Nafisa noticed, but she didn't say anything. She didn't ask if he was okay. She hired a nurse and told herself she was doing enough. She stayed in her room or went about her day as if nothing had changed. She never checked on him, never brought him warm food, never sat by his side. Then, one cold morning, before the sun had fully risen, Papa Jakanzi passed away quietly in his sleep. There were no goodbyes, no one to hold his hand, no last words, just silence. The same silence he had lived with for months. Nafisa was told by a maid. She stood frozen for a moment, but not a single tear rolled down her cheek. Her heart was numb. The funeral was quiet, small, and cold. Many in the community refused to attend, whispering about the way he had been treated. A week later, Nafisa received word from Nadomo. Her father, Madu, had slipped on wet ground and broken his leg. Without thinking twice, she packed a small bag and traveled to see him. But the welcome was not what she expected. As she walked through the streets of her childhood town, people stared but said nothing. Neighbors she had known since she was little crossed the road to avoid her. An old friend, Kemi, whom she had grown up with, looked her in the eyes and turned away without a word. Nafisa's heart sank. The shame clung to her like a shadow. When she reached her father's compound, the gateman almost didn't let her in. Inside, the house felt colder than she remembered. She asked to see her father. The nurse said, "He doesn't want to see you." Nafisa's knees shook. She begged. Finally, after what felt like forever, Madu agreed. She walked into the room slowly. Madu sat on the bed, his leg bandaged, his eyes distant. Nafisa knelt down, tears finally falling. "Papa," she whispered, "please forgive me." Madu looked at her, pain and disappointment in his eyes. "I didn't fail you," he said quietly. "You failed yourself." Those words cut deeper than any scream. She had nothing to say, no excuses left. When Nafisa returned to Ulawa, the house felt like a grave. She walked into the kitchen, the same cold kitchen where Papa Jakanzi used to sit alone on the floor. She slowly sat on that same spot. No makeup, no pride, just pain. She placed a bowl beside her, the way she used to place his, and whispered through tears, "Forgive me, but only silence replied. No warmth, no answer. It was too late. Karma had come, not loudly, but quietly, with cold floors, empty chairs, and the heavy silence of regret. If this story touched your heart, then take a moment to reflect. How often do we forget the silent ones around us, the ones who raised us, sacrificed for us, and quietly stood behind us through every stage of life? Papa Jakanzi's story is not just a tale, it's a mirror showing us what happens when love turns to pride, and gratitude is replaced by arrogance. If you still have someone to call Baba, Papa, or Daddy, go to them, hug them, serve them, say thank you. Don't wait for an empty chair and silence to teach you a lesson, because once they're gone, no apology, no tear, and no regret can bring them back. Let this be a reminder: no gold is brighter than a grateful heart, and no throne is higher than the one that honors the elders who walked before us. If this story moved you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, maybe a daughter, a son, or a friend who has forgotten their roots. And if you love stories that carry powerful lessons like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another tale. Your support helps us keep these stories alive, and for that, we say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, cherish your loved ones before it's too late.